By 8:42 on Friday morning, my entire family was standing at the Delta counter in Concourse B at Denver International Airport, staring at a screen that said their reservations didn't exist. I know that because my sister Erin called me 3 times in under a minute before I finally answered. The first thing I heard wasn't hello, it was, "What did you do?" Behind her, I could hear the airport announcements, the low hum of rolling suitcases, one of her kids whining. My father's voice cut in sharp and controlled. "Natalie, the agent, says the tickets were canceled. All of them. Even ours." I was sitting at my kitchen table in my townhouse in Lakewood, still in sweatpants, a mug of coffee going cold, beside my laptop. The sun had just come up over the foothills. I hadn't packed. I wasn't going anywhere. I know I said. There was a silence on the other end that felt like the moment before a glass shatters. My sister called me selfish 48 hours earlier because I refused to babysit her 4 kids on the $14,000 family vacation I paid for. My parents backed her without hesitation. They told me that if I wasn't willing to help, maybe I shouldn't come at all. So I logged into my account and made one quiet decision. They didn't realize the tickets were in my name. Not until they reached the airport. My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 29 years old, a certified public accountant with a regional firm in downtown Denver. Numbers are what I do for a living. Risk contracts, timelines, liability. I read fine print the way other people read novels. When I booked the cabin in Jackson Hole back in August, a timber lodge with enough bedrooms for everyone, I paid for it on my card. I booked my parents' flights. I booked Erin's, her husband Mark's, and their 4 children's seats. I forwarded everyone their confirmations. What I did not forward was the detail that every single reservation was tied to my login, my credit card, and my authority to cancel. 48 hours ago, Erin sent a message in our family group chat with a subject line that might as well have read schedule. She had mapped out my kid duty from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day of the trip. Ski days for her and Mark. Bonding time for me and the children. When I said I needed a break too, she called me selfish. My mother Linda told me family helps. My father Richard said money didn't excuse me from responsibility. If I wasn't willing to pitch in, maybe I should stay home. So I did. At the airport, Erin's voice rose again. "You can't just cancel a $14,000 vacation because your feelings are hurt." I looked at the confirmation emails still open on my screen. Refund pending. Refund processed. Each one stamped with my name. "It wasn't about my feelings," I said. "You told me not to come." I could hear my father exhale the sound he used when he thought I was being dramatic at 16 instead of rational at 29. "You embarrassed this family," he said. Number 1, I thought. I stopped funding it. And as Erin began to panic in the background, something sharper in her tone than anger, I realized this was about more than a ruined ski trip. I just didn't know how much more. Not yet. It was still Friday morning when the airport calls stopped, but the word selfish kept echoing in my kitchen long after the line went dead. I didn't grow up hearing that word about Erin. I grew up hearing it about me. Erin is 5 years older than I am. When we were kids in Littleton, she was the one with the loud laugh, the big circle of friends, the teachers who described her as natural leader. I was the quiet one who color-coded her homework and balanced imaginary budgets in a spiral notebook. My parents used to joke that I was born 40 years old. What they meant was dependable. By the time I was 10, I was the one reminding everyone about dentist appointments. By 13, I was packing Erin's lunch if she overslept. By 16, I was working weekends at a grocery store while Erin was planning her wedding shower with our mother. When she married Mark, high school sweetheart turned regional sales rep, with big promises and bigger commissions, I helped fold the reception programs. I didn't question why my college savings job money was also covering last-minute floral deposits. Family helps, Mom said back then too. When Erin had her first baby, I drove down after work to hold him so she could shower. When she had her second, third, and fourth, I sent checks. When the minivan broke down, when daycare fees spiked, when Mark's commission structure changed. I never called it lending. I called it support. I thought that was what sisters did. The Jackson Hole trip had been my idea. Not because we couldn't afford a hotel somewhere cheaper, but because I wanted something spacious enough that no one felt crowded or resentful. A cabin with separate bedrooms, a fireplace, a view of snow-covered peaks, neutral ground. I booked it in August, months before the holidays, when my firm's fall audit schedule was already filling my calendar. I paid the deposit the same day I got my annual bonus. It felt symbolic, like I was investing in something softer than spreadsheets. When I forwarded the confirmation email to the family group chat, Erin replied with heart emojis and ski gifs. My father texted, "Proud of you, kiddo." My mother said it would be our best Christmas yet. No one mentioned childcare. That part came this past Wednesday night in the form of a 4-page PDF Erin attached to the chat. I remember the file name clearly, Jackson_schedule_final. She had color-coded it. Blue blocks labeled SKI. Green blocks labeled Family Dinner. Yellow blocks labeled Natalie plus kids. 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day. I stared at the document longer than I'd ever stared at a tax return. Not because it was complicated, because it was so certain, so assumed. There was no question mark. No. Would you mind? No. Can we talk about this? Just a plan. When I typed back that I needed rest too, that I had torn cartilage in my knee in April, and wasn't skiing anyway, I tried to keep it light. I suggested hiring a local nanny for ski hours. I even offered to split the cost. That's when Erin wrote, "Wow, that's selfish." My mother responded within minutes, "Family helps Natalie." My father added, "Money isn't everything," as if the $14,000 I'd already wired were a decorative detail. Sitting in my quiet kitchen Friday morning, with the e-ticket confirmations still open on my screen, I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I hadn't been invited on that vacation. I'd been assigned a role, and for the first time in my life, I had declined the part. Wednesday night, 2 days before the flight, I called my mother instead of typing back into the group chat. It was 9:17 p.m. I remember, because I looked at the clock before I hit dial, like I needed proof of the exact moment things shifted. Mom answered on the third ring. I could hear cabinets closing in the background. She was packing early, like she always did. "Are you seriously upset about this?" she asked, before I could finish saying hello. I took a breath. "I'm not upset. I just need you to hear me. I booked this trip so we could all spend time together. I didn't book it to work 8-hour childcare shifts." There was a pause. Not confusion. Evaluation. "Natalie," she said softer now, the way she did when she was about to explain something obvious to a child. "Your sister is raising 4 children. You have a quiet house and a flexible job. You can rest anytime." I looked around my kitchen at the stack of audit binders I'd brought home, the knee brace folded over the back of a chair from my injury in April. Flexible wasn't the word I would have chosen. I offered to help in the evenings, I said. I even offered to split a nanny. "I just don't want to be scheduled." That word seemed to irritate her. Family isn't a transaction, she said. You don't get to buy your way out of participation. I closed my eyes. I'm not buying my way out. I already paid for everyone to go. And we appreciate that, she replied quickly. Almost too quickly. But money doesn't replace showing up. I am showing up, I said. Just not as unpaid staff. She exhaled sharply. Erin feels judged. You've always made her feel like she's irresponsible because you're so organized. That caught me off guard. I've never said that. You don't have to say it, she said. It's how you are. After we hung up, my phone lit up with a text from Erin. If you're going to act like this, don't bother coming. No emoji this time. No exclamation point. Just a sentence. I stared at it for a long time. I thought about typing something conciliatory. Something that would smooth it over like I always had. Instead, I opened my laptop. The cabin contract was in a folder labeled Jackson. I scrolled past the amenities, the square footage, the check-in instructions, until I reached the cancellation policy. Full refund, if canceled, 48 hours prior to check-in. 50% if canceled, 24 hours prior. Check-in was Friday at 4 p.m. It was Wednesday night. I did the math automatically. 46 hours and change. My chest tightened, not with anger, but with awareness. This wasn't theoretical. This was time-bound. I opened the airline confirmations next. 6 tickets, all purchased under my SkyMiles account. My name listed as primary traveler and purchaser. I wasn't looking to cancel. Not yet. I was looking to understand the structure. Because something in Erin's message, "Don't bother coming," didn't feel like heat of the moment frustration. It felt like certainty. Like she believed I would fold. My father sent a separate text 15 minutes later. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was just noticing, for the first time, that every single piece of this trip, every seat, every room key, every charge, ran through me. I closed the laptop without clicking anything. But I didn't forget what I'd just seen. Thursday morning came too fast. I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that sentence again. Don't bother coming. At 6:30 a.m. My alarm went off out of habit. I lay there staring at the ceiling in my Lakewood townhouse, the early winter light filtering through the blinds. It was December, the kind of Colorado cold that makes the air feel metallic. I was supposed to be packing that morning. Instead, I opened my laptop. The Jackson folder was still sitting on my desktop, like it had been waiting for me to grow up. I told myself I was just reviewing options, just being thorough. That's what I do for a living. I analyze risk before anyone else even sees it. The cabin's cancellation page loaded slowly, the blue progress bar inching across the screen. My heart was beating harder than it should have, for something as simple as clicking a button. Full refund if canceled at least 48 hours before check-in. Check-in was 4 p.m. Friday. It was now 7:12 a.m. Thursday. Less than 33 hours. The number landed in my chest like a weight. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. Erin. I didn't answer. Another buzz. Mom. Then a text from Dad. Let's not make this a bigger issue. Apologize, and we'll move on. Move on. As if nothing had shifted. As if being scheduled like hired help was a misunderstanding that could be smoothed over with the right tone. Another message from Erin came through while I was still staring at the screen. The kids are already talking about Aunt Natalie's movie nights. I hope you're happy. That did it. Not the accusation, the assumption. She was still operating under the belief that I would fold, that I would show up at the airport with my carry-on and my credit card and pretend this was normal. I clicked into the airline reservations next. 6 tickets, purchased under my Sky Miles account. My name at the top, as primary traveler and purchaser. I scrolled through the fare rules. My parents' seats were refundable. Aaron and Mark's tickets weren't unless canceled by the account holder, which was me. A small, almost clinical part of my brain noted the structure. Authority wasn't shared. It never had been. I went back to the cabin page. Are you sure you want to cancel this reservation? The question felt larger than a ski trip. If I clicked yes, I wouldn't just be canceling a vacation. I would be breaking a pattern that had held my family together for decades. I imagined arriving in Jackson Hole, watching Erin hand me a diaper bag, while she and Mark headed for the slopes, hearing my father joke about how I was good with kids anyway, seeing my mother nod approvingly at Erin's sacrifice and mine. I imagined spending the week feeling small. My phone buzzed again. Dad, don't embarrass us. There it was. Not don't hurt your sister. Not let's talk. Don't embarrass us. I looked at the time again. 7:28 a.m. 32 hours until check-in. The deadline wasn't just financial. It was psychological. I clicked yes. The page refreshed. A confirmation number appeared. Refund will be processed to the original form of payment within 5 to 7 business days. No fireworks, no dramatic sound. Just a transaction, complete. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exposed. I moved to the airline site, next hand steady, now in a way they hadn't been before. I selected each passenger. I reviewed the cancellation policy one last time. Then I confirmed. 6 seats disappeared. My inbox chimed almost immediately. Cancellation confirmations, credit memos. It all looked so tidy in writing. Outside, a neighbor started his truck. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Life was going on. My phone rang again. I let it ring. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was deciding. Friday morning arrived exactly the way I knew it would. Loud. My phone started ringing at 8:31 a.m., just as I was pouring a second cup of coffee. I let it vibrate once against the kitchen counter before flipping it over. Erin. I didn't answer. It rang again. Then my mother. Then my father. By 8:38, the family group chat was lighting up like a Christmas tree. The airline says there's no active reservation. Natalie, pick up your phone. This has to be a mistake. At 8:42, I answered. The background noise hit first rolling suitcases, overhead announcements, the sharp echo of a busy terminal. Concourse B at DIA. I could picture exactly where they were standing. What did you do? Erin demanded. No greeting, no pretense. I followed your instructions, I said. There was a beat of silence, and then my father's voice entered the call. The agent says the tickets were canceled from the purchasing account. Yes, I said. They were. My mother gasped softly, like she had just watched someone break a family heirloom. You canceled the entire trip, she asked. The cabin, I said. And the flights. You can't just do that, Erin snapped. The kids are standing here with their backpacks. Mark took time off work. We told everyone we were going to Jackson. That was the first crack. Mark doesn't take time off lightly. His sales role lives and dies on quotas. I knew that because he talks about it constantly at Thanksgiving. I'm sorry they're disappointed, I said carefully. But you told me not to come if I wouldn't babysit. That was an expression Erin shot back. You don't take things that literally. I almost laughed at that. I'm an accountant, I said. Literal is my job. My father cut in. This is bigger than semantics. You embarrassed this family. People know we're traveling today. There it was again. Image. Not Natalie, we're sorry. Not, let's fix this together. Just embarrassment. You can rebook my, Mother said quickly. Just put it back on your card. We'll figure it out later. We'll figure it out later. The same phrase I'd heard my entire adult life. I leaned back in my chair. The sunlight was stronger now, cutting across the kitchen floor in long stripes. I'm not rebooking anything, I said. You have the money, Aaron insisted. You got the refund, didn't you? Yes. Then send it to us, she said. We'll handle it from here. There it was. Not, let's talk. Not, I'm sorry. Send the money. My father's voice hardened. You have an obligation to your sister. The word landed differently this time. Obligation. I thought about the color-coded schedule, the yellow blocks labeled Natalie plus kids, the way it had never occurred to them to ask. I had an offer, I said slowly. A gift. You turned it into a contract. That's dramatic, Aaron said. No, I replied. This is. I heard Mark in the background, then his voice low and tight. We can't afford. He stopped himself. I noticed that. Not we don't want to. Not we shouldn't have to. Can't afford. Put Dad back on, I said. My father came back on the line breathing hard. I'm not transferring the refund, I told him. I'm not rebooking flights. I'm not paying to be told I'm selfish. You're destroying this family over pride, he said. No, I answered. I'm ending a pattern. There was chaos on their side. Children asking questions, my mother whispering, Aaron's voice rising. For the first time, I didn't feel like the youngest in the room. I felt like the only adult on the call. And that realization that I could say no and survive it was the real point of no return. I ended the call before they could threaten me with Christmas silence. The phone sat quiet in my hand. Outside, a plane passed overhead, climbing into the winter sky. It wasn't carrying my family. They didn't go home quietly. By 10:15 that same Friday morning, my doorbell rang. I knew it was them before I checked the camera. My townhouse sits at the end of a short row in Lakewood, close enough to the light rail that you can hear it if the wind's right. Aaron's SUV was parked crooked at the curb. My parents' sedan idled behind it. I didn't open the door immediately. I watched through the small screen mounted beside my kitchen cabinet. Aaron was pacing. Mark stood with his arms crossed, jaw tight. My father rang the bell again, longer this time. I unlocked the door, but kept the chain on. What are you doing here? I asked. You think you can just hang up on us, my father said. He looked older than he had at the airport. Anger does that. We needed to talk face to face. My mother added, stepping forward, like she could soften the blow of their presence. This is my house, I said calmly. You should have called. Aaron let out a short, humorless laugh. We did call. You ignored us. I didn't correct her. Mark finally spoke. We can't just absorb $14,000 disappearing overnight. That word again. Absorb. Nothing disappeared, I said. The money went back to my account. The trip didn't happen. It was our Christmas, Aaron snapped. You ripped it away because you couldn't handle helping your own family. I offered help, I replied. You scheduled labor. My father stepped closer to the door. This is pride, Natalie. You're making a statement instead of being a sister. No, I said. I'm being a sister who isn't available for exploitation. My mother flinched at that word. Don't be dramatic, she whispered. But something about Mark's posture caught my attention. He wasn't angry the way Aaron was. He looked cornered. You told everyone at church we were going to Jackson, my mother continued. People donated ski jackets for the kids. That surprised me. Donated? I asked. Aaron hesitated just a fraction too long. It's called community. Mark looked at her sharply. A small silence opened between them. You asked people for help, I said, more to clarify than accuse. It's none of your business, Aaron said quickly. The point is, we rearranged everything around this trip. I felt the shift then. This wasn't just about babysitting or hurt feelings. The stakes were bigger than pride. You rearranged everything, assuming my compliance, I said. We assumed you cared. My father shot back. I do care, I said, which is why I'm not funding something built on manipulation. Mark exhaled hard. We already put deposits down on ski rentals, he muttered. We used credit. Aaron shot him a look that could have cut glass. That was the second crack. Credit. I didn't react outwardly, but I filed it away. This conversation is over, I said finally. I'm not transferring money. I'm not rebooking flights. And I'm not apologizing for refusing to be assigned. You'll regret this, my father said. Families don't recover from this kind of humiliation. Families don't recover from resentment either, I replied. My mother's eyes filled, but she didn't step forward this time. Erin leaned closer to the door, her voice dropping low. If you think you've won something today, you haven't. You've just isolated yourself. Maybe I said, or maybe I've stopped isolating myself inside your expectations. I closed the door before they could answer. Through the frosted glass, I saw them standing there for a long moment. No one moved. No one knew who should lead. Then my father turned first. When their cars finally pulled away, the street went quiet again. But the silence felt different. Less like fear, more like clarity. By Saturday morning, it wasn't just a family argument anymore. It was public. I found out because Mrs. Halverson, from 2 doors down, knocked on my door at 9 a.m. sharp. She's in her late 60s, retired school librarian, the kind of neighbor who bakes oatmeal cookies and knows exactly when your trash bins are out too long. I didn't want to assume, she said gently, when I opened the door, but your sister posted something online. My stomach tightened. I hadn't checked social media since Friday. I didn't need the commentary. Mrs. Halverson held out her phone. It's already been shared in the church group. The post was from Aaron. Some people think money makes them better than family. Pray for us. We showed up at the airport with 4 children and no tickets because someone decided to teach us a lesson. There was a photo attached. The kids sitting on the terminal floor, backpacks at their feet. My mother in the background, with her head bowed. Mark looking grim. No context. No mention of the schedule. No mention of, don't bother coming. Just humiliation. The comments were predictable. We're so sorry this happened. How cruel. Families should stick together. My name wasn't tagged, but it didn't have to be. Everyone in our small church circle knew who had paid for the trip. Erin had made sure of that when she thanked me publicly back in August. I handed the phone back carefully. Thank you for letting me know, I said. Mrs. Halverson hesitated. Are you all right? I will be. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table and finally opened Facebook. There were already private messages waiting. Are you okay? What happened? One from Pastor Glenn asking if I'd be willing to talk. That's when I realized something important. Erin hadn't just tried to shame me. She had tried to secure the narrative. If I stayed silent, her version would become truth. I opened my laptop instead of firing off a defensive post. I pulled up the cabin contract, the cancellation timestamp, the group chat screenshots, the color-coded Jackson schedule, final PDF, with my name highlighted in yellow blocks from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. I didn't post them. Not yet. Instead, I requested a meeting with Pastor Glenn, Sunday afternoon after service. If this was going to unfold in public, it would unfold completely. By noon, my father called again. I let it go to voicemail. His message was measured, this time. You've embarrassed your sister enough. Don't escalate this. Delete whatever you're planning to post. I hadn't told him I was planning anything, which meant Erin was nervous. Good. But nervous people don't retreat quietly. They double down. An hour later, Erin tagged my company in a comment thread under her post. Imagine working for someone who treats family like this. That changed the stakes. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or church gossip anymore. My firm had a strict social media policy. Anything that hinted at reputational damage could trigger a review. I felt the shift in my body. Not panic, calculation. She had moved the battlefield. Fine. I would move too. I called our HR director, Marcia Klein, and left a calm, factual voicemail, asking for a brief meeting Monday morning regarding a personal matter that might surface online. Then I gathered every document into a single folder and labeled it documentation. If Erin wanted the community to see a story about selfishness, I would make sure they saw the whole record. Not to punish her, but to protect myself. Because this was no longer about a vacation. It was about credibility. And credibility, once questioned publicly, doesn't repair itself. Sunday afternoon, I sat across from Pastor Glenn in his office behind the sanctuary. The room smelled faintly of old hymnals and coffee. A wooden cross hung on the wall behind his desk, not large, but steady. He had known my family for more than 20 years. He had married Erin and Mark. He had baptized all 4 of their children. He folded his hands when I placed the folder labeled documentation on the desk between us. "I'm not here to attack my sister," I said. "I'm here because this is already public." He nodded slowly. "I've seen the post. I'm not responding online," I continued. "But I won't let silence define me either." I opened the folder. First the cabin contract. Cancellation timestamp, Thursday, 7:28 a.m. Full refund policy clearly stated. Then the airline confirmations with my name listed as purchaser. Then the PDF schedule. Yellow blocks, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Natalie plus kids. Pastor Glenn adjusted his glasses. He read quietly. He did not rush. "Did they ask you before creating this?" he finally asked. "No. And when you declined, they told me not to come." He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. That sentence wasn't in Erin's post. "I know." We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, I could hear the faint echo of children running in the fellowship hall. "I need you to understand something," I said. "This isn't about babysitting. It's about being assigned a role without consent." He looked at me carefully. "What do you want to happen?" It was a fair question. "I want the truth known," I said. "Not for revenge, for balance." He nodded again. "If I call a meeting with your parents, and Erin, will you come?" "Yes." "Will you stay calm?" "I already am." He studied my face as if testing that claim. "Very well," he said. "Tomorrow evening, Monday evening." That gave me time. After leaving the church, I sat in my car for several minutes before turning the engine on. I replayed the last 72 hours in my mind. Erin had moved fast because she assumed I would defend myself emotionally. Instead, I had documented. But I had made one mistake. I underestimated how quickly reputation can be weaponized. When she tagged my company, she crossed a line that didn't just threaten me socially. It threatened her credibility, too. I pulled out my phone and searched Mark's business page. A new post from 2 weeks ago caught my attention. Excited for a big winter expansion. Grateful for community support. Community support. I clicked into the comments. Several church members had responded with congratulations and small donation pledges toward the kids' ski fund. The ski fund. That hadn't been mentioned at my door. I felt something settle into place. This wasn't just a canceled vacation. It was a narrative built on the image of sacrifice and hardship. If I confronted them publicly about the childcare schedule, they could still frame me as rigid. But if I brought forward the financial inconsistencies, quietly, factually, the moral weight would shift. Not to destroy them, to correct the imbalance. I didn't draft a social media post. Instead, I emailed Pastor Glenn a copy of everything in the folder. Then I scheduled a meeting with Marcia at HR for Monday morning and attached screenshots of the post tagging my company. Control wasn't about speaking louder. It was about choosing the room. And tomorrow night, that room would have witnesses. Monday morning, I sat in Marcia Klein's office with my hands folded in my lap and my phone turned face down on the table. Marcia was our HR director, mid-50s, precise, haircut. The kind of calm that comes from handling other people's emergencies for a living. She slid a printed screenshot across the desk. Aaron's post. Aaron tagging my company. My name wasn't in the post, but the implication was. Marcia didn't need drama to read between lines. "I'm not here to make a complaint," I said, before she could speak. "I'm here to document that I did not initiate this." Marcia nodded once. "That's the right approach." I handed her a single-page summary, dates, times, what was posted, and the fact that it involved a family dispute unrelated to my work. No emotional language, no accusations, just structure. She read it, then looked up. "Do you feel unsafe?" "No," I said, "but I do feel targeted." "Understood," she said. "If anything escalates forward, it to me. We'll keep a record." A record. That word mattered. It meant the system was listening. When I walked back to my desk, I had 3 missed calls from my mother and 1 from Aaron. I didn't answer. I had already chosen the room. That evening, the church office felt smaller than it had on Sunday. Pastor Glenn had arranged chairs in a loose circle, like this was counseling, not confrontation. My parents arrived first. My father didn't look at me. My mother's eyes were red, but her mouth was set in a hard line. Aaron came in last with Mark. She held her phone like a shield. Pastor Glenn opened with a prayer. Then he looked at Aaron. "You've shared this situation publicly," he said. "Natalie asked for a private meeting to clarify facts. We will speak one at a time." Aaron's cheeks flushed. "I was asking for support. You named her employer." Pastor Glenn replied quietly. "That's more than support." Aaron's eyes flicked toward me. "You cost my children Christmas." I didn't respond to that. I opened my folder and slid the schedule onto the table. Pastor Glenn leaned forward. My mother's eyes widened the moment she saw the yellow blocks. "What is that?" she whispered. "It's what Aaron sent me," I said. My voice sounded steady even to me. 8 to 4, every day. No discussion. Aaron snatched at the page. "That's not—" "It is," Pastor Glenn interrupted. "And you didn't mention it in your post." Mark cleared his throat. "We were stressed," he said. "We thought she'd understand." Understand what Pastor Glenn asked. A silence opened. The kind of silence that forces the truth to choose a side. My father finally spoke. "This is still selfish," he said. "You had the means." I reached into the folder and placed one more item on the table, screenshots of the ski fund comments under Mark's business post, along with the date. Pastor Glenn read them carefully. My mother leaned in. Aaron's face went pale. "You asked church members for money," my mother said, her voice thin. Aaron's eyes flashed. "It was for the kids. For a ski trip, you told everyone you couldn't afford childcare for," I said. "That's the part I couldn't reconcile." Mark looked down. His hands were clasped so tight his knuckles were white. Pastor Glenn didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Aaron," he said, "you presented yourselves as stranded victims, but you also solicited funds and withheld the details of what you demanded from Natalie." Aaron swallowed. "We were going to pay her back," she said quickly. My father's head snapped up. "What do you mean, pay her back?" That was the moment the room shifted. Because now my parents weren't just hearing about babysitting. They were hearing that Aaron and Mark had treated my $14,000 like a loan they could gamble with. My mother put a hand over her mouth. Pastor Glenn's gaze moved from Aaron to Mark, then back. "And you attempted to pressure Natalie by threatening exclusion," he said, looking at Aaron. "And when she refused, you tried public shame." Erin's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced down, then froze. "What?" Mark asked. Erin's voice came out small. "The church group. Pastor's wife just commented. I didn't have to see the screen to know what that meant." The narrative was collapsing in real time. And for the first time since Friday, Erin wasn't angry. She was afraid. No one shouted after that. Pastor Glenn didn't need to raise his voice. He simply asked Aaron one question. "Are you willing to correct what you posted?" The room felt smaller than it had an hour earlier. Aaron stared at her phone. Mark looked like he wanted the floor to open beneath him. My father's posture had shifted. He wasn't angry anymore. He was calculating the cost. "It was emotional," Aaron said finally. "I didn't mean to drag Natalie's job into it." "That's not the only issue," Pastor Glenn replied. "You presented a partial truth. That harms more than pride." Silence again. My mother reached across and touched Aaron's hand. "Fix it," she whispered. That was the moment the balance tipped. Aaron deleted the original post first. Then, under Pastor Glenn's guidance, she wrote a new one. "We handled this poorly. The trip was a gift from Natalie. We made assumptions and responded emotionally. Please don't involve her workplace or speculate further. This is a private family matter." It wasn't an apology in the way I might have scripted it, but it was public accountability. Within minutes, the church thread shifted. Comments softened. Some disappeared. Pastor Glenn's wife added a short note about seeking full understanding before judgment. The narrative didn't explode. It recalibrated. That was enough. Mark spoke next, his voice low. "We'll return the donations." My father turned to him sharply. "What donations?" And for the first time, Erin didn't defend herself. She explained. "The ski fund, the borrowed deposits, the credit cards stretched thin, the pressure to look stable, the image." My parents listened without interrupting. My mother's face crumpled in a way I hadn't seen since I was a child. "This isn't about Natalie anymore," she said quietly. "This is about honesty. No one asked me to rebook the trip. No one asked for the refund." The fight had shifted from extracting something from me to containing the damage they had created. When the meeting ended, Pastor Glenn asked if we wanted to pray together. My father nodded. Aaron hesitated, then nodded too. I stood there, with them, not triumphant, not vindicated, just steady. Outside, the December air was sharp and clean. I walked to my car alone. On Wednesday, I had almost convinced myself that canceling the trip would cost me my family. Instead, it revealed what was already unstable. Over the next few weeks, Aaron and Mark sold the ski equipment they had purchased. They posted a public thank you to those who had contributed and confirmed the money had been returned. My father helped them meet with a financial advisor from church. My mother stopped talking about image and started talking about budget. As for me, I kept the refund, not as leverage, as closure. I booked a small cabin for one in Estes Park the week after Christmas. No schedule, no yellow blocks, just snow, a fireplace, and quiet. I didn't block my family, but I didn't volunteer either. When Erin called in January, her voice sounded different, smaller, less certain. "I was wrong," she said. "It wasn't theatrical. It was tired." I know I answered. "We didn't solve everything in that call. Healing isn't a meeting. It's maintenance." But something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer the automatic solution. And strangely, that made me more present, not less. Sometimes, justice isn't loud. It's the moment the roles reset. If you've ever had to draw a boundary with family, I'd love to hear how you handled it. Share your thoughts below, and if this story resonated, stay with me for the next one. Sometimes the hardest lines we draw are the ones that finally let us breathe.